Hi, I'm Father Joel, and welcome to Pilgrim Priest. I just returned from an awesome pilgrimage to Rome, and I'm grateful for that trip and everyone who came along. I'm also grateful to all of our mission partners and supporters, especially those who make monthly donations through patreon.com/pilgrimpriest. Thank you for listening, and God bless.
Saw a lot of really amazing things on my pilgrimage to Italy. We saw some medieval towns, Siena and Orvieto. I got to go to Assisi, see the tomb of Francis and Clare, and now Carlo Acutis, the newest saint. Also saw some really beautiful artwork, it was a lot of amazing things. 3 different Eucharistic miracles we visited while there. But the most amazing thing of all was our bus driver, Pino. Italian bus drivers are unreal. Their ability to thread these buses through narrow streets with double-parked cars and medieval towns and stuff. It was at a few points he'd make it around something and the bus would clap, because everybody was looking and thinking he's not going to make it. And then he would. I always thought of Italian traffic as highly competitive, like it was some kind of a full contact sport, because you'll see all these cars that have been kind of beat up. At one point somebody pointed out to me when I was in Italy, they're like, see that dent in the back of that car? It was a round shaped dent. They're like, yeah, that's from the helmet of a motorino driver. So that's how I pictured Italian traffic was highly competitive. But what I noticed as Pino was working the bus around was that he was negotiating with other drivers. He would gesture, and try to work out who would go first. And sometimes, because to get the buses around, especially some of these turns, you needed the other lane. And so he needed drivers to wait for him in order to get through. And so I was surprised at how many times there was some kind of negotiation, and then it all worked out. There was a lot more cooperation in Italian driving than I was expecting. At one point, we're coming into Siena, and we're going down this narrow road, and there's a lot of traffic coming the other way. And the road takes a sharp left, crosses a narrow bridge, and then takes another sharp left on the other side. So as Pino gets down there, he needs the other lane to make this turn, and there's a bus coming the other way. So the two of them gesture, and they work out that he's going to let the other bus go first. So he kind of backs up a little bit and gets out of the way. That bus comes through, and then the rest of the traffic waits for him to get through. And then when he gets to the other side, he kind of gestures, and that traffic realizes, we got to make room for the bus. And they do. They let him through. The cooperation was impressive. Now, that's not to say that there was always cooperation, right? Sometimes there were some crazy drivers that he yelled at, Italian style, And sometimes a driver didn't get the message, or, they didn't communicate well. But for the most part, I realized, like I said, that there was a lot more cooperation in Italian traffic than I was expecting. Everybody had to get somewhere, and they all wanted to get there safely. And so by working together, they increased everybody's chances of succeeding. Do we see the world through a vision of competition, or do we see it as an opportunity for cooperation? When I was a kid, my siblings and I were highly competitive with each other. And, you don't really have to teach sibling rivalry. You just have another kid, and your oldest kid sees that one as competition, and the youngest one tries to keep up with the oldest, and voila, there's sibling rivalry. I'm learning from my nieces and nephews. But I wish that we had worked out when we were littler that, a way to cooperate with each other and support each other. Because as we've gotten older now, we still haven't figured that out. My siblings mostly depend on ourselves and not on each other. We haven't really learned how to cooperate, how to be there for one another. Again, do we see life as a competition, or do we see opportunities for cooperation? It seems to me that for a number of decades, those who were elected to different political offices realized that they were called to represent all their constituents and not just the ones who'd voted for them. And so part of being in office was this role of needing to listen to all your people, even the ones you didn't personally agree with. But there seems to be kind of a new spirit in politics these days that sees a political office as an opportunity to win and hand out rewards to your people and promote your things. And so it's a kind of a winner-take-all mentality. There's definitely a sense of competition that there's either winners or losers. And so we don't want to be the losers, so we have to be the winners. Instead of trying to work out a way that we can all coexist comfortably. And I think this attitude of winners and losers, it's easy to fall into it, but it's the opposite of the gospel message. And I say that because in today's gospel, as in many other parables, Jesus wants to make a message really clear. Those who wind up being the winners in this life will be the losers in eternity. And those who end up being the losers here and now will wind up as the winners in eternity. That the first will be last and the last will be first. And so if we push and shove to get ourselves to first place here and now, we'll find that it doesn't really work out very well for us in eternity. And that's why it's important for us to begin even now to move out of that sense of competition and into a sense of cooperation. St. Francis of Assisi is one of the most famous saints, and he really chose to be poor. He chose poverty. Ironically, his religious order and his town are now quite rich, which I thought was kind of ironic, right? Francis is famous for his poverty, but the Franciscans clearly have a lot of money, at least judging from how nicely kept their buildings are. But then I thought, well, maybe that actually doesn't make sense, because Jesus promised that if we give up houses and lands and money and properties, if we sacrifice it here in this life, he'll reward us 100 times over. So it actually makes sense that if Francis chose poverty, God would bless him and those who followed in his footsteps. But I also see that there's then an invitation to the Franciscans to not become comfortable, to not become complacent, but rather to be grateful for the abundance that they've received and generous with those in need. In other words, there's a new opportunity for the followers of Francis to make the same choice as he did. We're all invited to live for the Lord, and when St. Peter did, his life ended in the persecution of Nero. Nero, of course, was on the top. He was a winner, but there was a big fire in Rome, and Nero seized the opportunity of the fire in 67 AD to grab some nice land downtown and to start building himself a super fancy villa. That didn't go over well. He couldn't quite quash the rumor that he had started the fire on purpose, or at least he hadn't done anything to prevent it. And so Nero ended up starting a persecution of Christians, blaming these Christians, and Peter was executed upside down, hung on a cross, and Paul was taken outside the city and beheaded. They appeared at that moment to be losers by the standards of this world. And yet, if you visit today, you'll find 2 enormous basilicas built over their graves, a sign that those who appear to be losers in this life, if they live for Christ, will end up as winners in eternity. So the invitation that we all receive is to move out of that sense of competition into a sense of cooperation, to realize that every one of us is willed by God. Every one of us has a place in God's plan. And it's not for us to try to be winners here and now. That ultimately won't work out. It's important for us to serve the Lord faithfully, and in doing so, we'll become winners in eternity, and that's what truly matters. Today we celebrate St. Wenceslaus, and Wenceslaus is a martyr to sibling rivalry, right? His brother Boleslas was the one that killed him. And yet Boleslas appears to have had a change of heart. He actually promoted Christianity and he continued to... Wenceslaus could have protected himself. We think he knew that there was a conspiracy against him, that people were conspiring to kill him. And so he could have struck first. He could have killed his brother to protect himself. But instead, he chose to be faithful to the gospel, to allow himself to be a loser here and now. He let his brother be the winner, and in the end, that worked out well for Wenceslaus, as he's acclaimed as a martyr and a saint, and has continued to inspire generations. We need to be grateful, right? We don't want to wind up like the rich man. We don't want to wind up a winner here and now. So what can we do? Well, first of all, I think it's important for us to be grateful for the blessings we've received, and then to be generous with those in need. Gratitude and generosity are really important. Lastly, that fight to be winners in the competition with my siblings, I think we all wound up as losers in the long run by not really being able to work together with one another. And I see that same thing happening. The harder we try to fight to be the winner and not to be a loser, the more we all lose out. The last thing we did, our sort of final day in Rome, was an audience with Pope Leo, and it was really an awesome experience. Pope Leo invited everyone to pray the Rosary during the month of October for peace. And I can see why he would ask for that. I think it's something we should all consider. Several weeks ago, I made a commitment to pray a rosary every day. You might think that that'd be something that I just have done. I prayed rosaries for a long time. We prayed a rosary when I was a kid, even. As a family, we'd pray a family rosary. But I've never really been committed to doing a daily rosary. And so I kind of felt moved that I should do that. And I noticed something shift. I noticed that when I was making a commitment to pray the rosary every day, I was finding more peace in my heart, and I felt myself more connected with Jesus and Mary. I don't know anyone who doesn't want a bigger, deeper connection with Jesus and Mary. So allow me to recommend to you the practice of a daily rosary. Consider making a commitment yourself to pray the rosary for peace. And we might find more peace in our world. We might find more peace in our country, but I guarantee you that if you commit to a daily rosary, you'll find more peace in your heart as you become more grateful and more generous and more able to cooperate instead of competing. You heard about the time that Oli and Lena went to Rome, right? And Oli really, really wanted to tailgate and say at the Vatican. And Lena's like, I don't think that's a good idea, dear. But he's like, oh, it'll be fine. The Pope will love it. So he gets out his Weber grill and he's grilling. And suddenly, the Pope appears at the window. And he goes like this. And Oli can't believe it. Lena comes running over and Oli's like, did you see that? I told you it was a good idea. The Pope gave me a blessing. And Lena said, yeah, but you didn't hear what he said. He said, hey, you, take your grill and your wife and get out of here.